Marilynn Hughes has authored 109 books, 40 magazines, and 18 CDs on out-of-body travel and comparative religious mysticism, including her seminal classic, The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism, which is now in development to become a feature film or TV series. These books, along with the accompanying music and art, are all available on her website, outofbodytravel.org. Marilynn has experienced, researched, written, and taught about out-of-body travel and mysticism since 1987 and has appeared on innumerable radio and television programs to discuss her thousands of out-of-body experiences, and it is a real honor and a real treat to be able to welcome Marilynn Hughes to the show with us tonight. Welcome, Marilynn. How are you doing tonight? And welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. It's great to talk with you again.
So glad that we have this opportunity to visit once again. You're absolutely one of my favorite people to have on the show. And because of that, I sit here going, okay, what could possibly be the first question for Marilynn? I don't even know where to start. But I think, how have you been? Let's start there. How have you been the last 4 years?
I'm doing good. Just, kind of continuing the journey and, continuing to move forward with the spiritual and, just doing fine. Thank you. How about yourself?
Oh, it's got ups and downs, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
yep.
hanging in there, learning my way, I guess, and you wouldn't think that you'd be learning your way at such a late age like I am. But I guess things happen that knock us off our path, and then we have to figure out how to get back on the path. And no matter how old you are, Marilynn, I don't think we ever stop learning how to navigate this thing called life,
No, we don't. No, I think it's part of the spiritual path throughout our lives, and I don't think it ends until maybe 20 minutes after death, as a once very wise priest once told me.
Wow, I've never heard that, but I do think that you and that priest are probably absolutely right. Interesting. And that's probably going to lay the foundation of everything that we're going to talk about tonight. But I have to ask you, I saw your clip, but can you tell us about the Road to Armageddon, this documentary that you were involved with? What's that about?
Well, the Road to Armageddon was a documentary that was put together with the idea of investigating through the eyes of many different spiritual and religious views. And so the director, Charles Faucus, had interviewed a lot of people from different walks of life, people involved in Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and all the different religions, and also myself. And we were talking about, in the film, the true path of the soul, which ironically, covers the fact that the road to Armageddon actually becomes a very personal journey with each and every soul, because what it is that each of us is facing our own internal struggle, our own internal Armageddon that either awakens us and brings us to something greater than ourselves, or, we can get caught up in it and continue to kind of do the same old things that we've always done and kind of get stuck in this kind of circling around doing the same kinds of things over and over again and not making the kind of spiritual progress that we really want to see in our lives. And so the road to Armageddon becomes more of a personal journey, not just something that we would, a lot of people associate with this world event or something that happens all around us, but it's actually something that's happening within each and every one of us at different points during our lives, bringing us closer to the reason that we are here and closer to the understandings that will hopefully end up bringing us closer to, an all-holy God, which is where, part of the separation that we have as human beings begins, is that separation from the all-holy God.
Wow, there's a whole lot there. Again, now I still wonder, what is the next absolute best question? Let me ask you this, Marilynn. Okay, because I see people talking about this a lot these days. A lot of people kind of out there hurting, struggling, trying to figure out, life is getting harder for us out here. How do we navigate this life, this world that we're in? It feels like the world is kind of against us. So how do we find out why we are here? And then when let's just leave it there. How do we find out why we're here?
Well, ironically, out-of-body travel is one of those methods that can lead us to those understandings, because, out-of-body travel has this capability of taking us into these different dimensions and spheres. And, by so doing, we go into not just these other realms, but we also will go into the future and the past, meaning past lives, things that will give us clues as to what is it that's holding us here. What's holding us here? What do we keep doing over and over again that we're not quite getting right? And what are the different things that we actually tried in these past lifetimes that are brought to the forefront? And so then you kind of begin to start putting together the information, and you start looking at, these are the things I've tried in the past and they did not work. I'm still here. So, one of the things that I do tell people is that if you are incarnate here, then we know that you have a purpose. And this thing that's so interesting about it is that our purpose is the same for all of us, although we have different ways in which that, we are to bring it about. So we're all called to different things. We have different experiences in life. The world is a huge, vast place, so we have very different ways that people can be experiencing the human condition, from the jungles of anywhere to, a big city. And you can have anything in between, where there are so many different kinds of experiences. But what it all comes down to is this understanding of the grand phases of the soul, which, by the way, is the name of a documentary that you can watch at our YouTube channel. And so the grand phases of the soul opens up for us the understanding of the purification journey of the soul. So every one of us, if we are incarnate here, we have some type of purification to undergo as a soul. And when we understand this and begin this process, we can accelerate the rate at which we are progressing spiritually, but we can also make it possible that rather than continuing to kind of recycle, karmically circle, continue to reincarnate and do the same things over and over again, that we are changing the frequency of the energy, the motion forward of where our soul is going, so that when we do cross over, we may actually have the opportunity to go to the next level of education in the soul journey. But so when you talk about, what is this purification you're talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Am I contaminated? No.
Well, and yes, we are all contaminated. But this is not anything for us to be intimidated by or afraid by. We are contaminated by our misperceptions of eternal love versus karmic love. We are contaminated by our misperceptions about life and light and the things that have to do with our destiny, because everything has either a karmic thrust or an eternal thrust. And what we are seeking to achieve is to go from that karmic pattern that all of us generally are born with the exception of some very, unique souls who are, saints. You know what I mean? People who come through who might be saints. But for the general body of us, we come through with some type of karmic purification that needs to occur so that we can actually kind of flip the switch from this karmic love, this karmic understanding of destiny, this karmic understanding of our lives and our understanding of light, and take it to an eternal understanding. When we do that, we're literally going from the karmic, which is momentary, to the eternal, which is immortal. And that is what the thrust is. That's what switches. We're going from a very limited, grounded place that cannot move into a higher level of understanding yet to an eternal understanding. And that's what this purification is all about. And it goes through a very simple process. There's a really simple way to kind of give you a general idea of it, which is, the 7 deadly sins and the seven virtues, the 7 lively virtues. And so as we go through our existence here, we are continually doing things that we don't even recognize because they're so habitual. And they're not just habitual from this particular lifetime, but they go into previous existences. And because they're that habitual, it's very hard for us to see it. But that is what we need to be able to do, is to recognize and identify those areas where we are falling into vice and going into these deadly vices that are pulling us away from God. And the reason this is so important, because we have to remember God as an all-holy God. And so in order for us to evolve and become more compatible to that, we have to remove these fetters. A lot of times people think of it only in terms of like sin and redemption. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that the Buddhists do that is very helpful is this understanding of fetters, cankers, hindrances, these things that keep us from moving forward spiritually. And when you remove the idea of sin and the guilt and the shame that comes from that, and you see it as this is a hindrance, this is pulling me away from the objective. And therefore, I'm going to identify it and begin to really analyze it and see what I need to do to transform it into something higher. And oftentimes, the way that we do that is by utilizing a practice of an opposite virtue to assist us in overcoming certain things. A lot of people will have, most of us do, and for those out there who have read my book, The Mysteries of the Redemption, they'll know that my primary vice was that of lust. And that's a very common one. And, I've heard from many, many readers about how they were so ashamed of this being their issue, but that they were able to realize that they could take this from a very empowered place and recognize that there is a process by which they can overcome these things that are holding them to earth, holding them to the ground. There are other people who might have issues of greed, people who might have issues of vanity. So, it's as many as vices as there are, we can have a primary vice amongst them. And then we have secondary things that we also have to work on. What makes out-of-body travel so uniquely equipped to help with this purification journey is the fact that when you go into the out-of-body travel state, many people, just remembering that we start off with the basic experiences, but it does progress. And as you progress, some of the things that will happen is you will be taken into what I call the energetic truth of certain things in your life now, certain things in your previous lifetimes, and you will experience the energy of it. And what makes that so powerful is that, we can say or tell somebody why something is not bringing them to where they want to go, as much as, we can just do that over and over again, but it doesn't have the same impact as someone going into the energy of it and actually experiencing on a cellular level of their soul the energetic drag or the energetic enlivenment. And so we can experience and feel, okay, immediately we have that energetic truth. This is a primary vice of mine or a hindrance. And I'm feeling the energy of why this energy is not working in my favor, why this energy is holding me back from that which I seek. And so you have this immediate awareness, which if someone just goes through the normal, natural way of doing this, sometimes, it could take them 10, 20 years to get to the same point that a single experience of that magnitude can do for a soul, taking them into it. And then there's no reasonings, no arguments with the self. It's just simply, I'm there, I understand it, I energetically feel it, and I understand what has to change energetically in order for me to take that next step into the higher thrust, which is going to move me towards that which I'm seeking. And, and this kind of brings us to the all-pervasive question is, what are we seeking? We're moving towards that all-holy God. And, I'm using that terminology with God in that way for a reason, because I'm going to switch gears on it now.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
there's some baggage. I think there's some baggage attached to it.
But we have to, now that we recognize that, okay, there's baggage attached to it, we need to really examine why. Mm-hmm. Why is there baggage attached? The concept and understanding of God. And our misunderstandings about divinity and about universal being can be worked out and rectified, not unlike we might have to between ourselves and another human being where we have a misunderstanding. And, there is a grand misunderstanding that's going on right now. There's a lot of pain to a lot of people, which is about the very nature of God. And because there's such a push of, no, we have to remove God from everything because, first of all, it's either we're scientific or that's just, we have these negative associations with God. Mm-hmm. But this is where I would ask for those who are interested in really examining that, take a moment to think about what have you heard from the thousands of near-death experiences that people have shared, and what have you heard from people who are experiencing out-of-body travel, and what is the prime element. One of the things that happens almost universally for people who have these experiences pretty much right off the bat, and that is that they enter into this unconditional love, which is nothing like earthly love. It is almost like an elemental love, something that is existential almost. It is this unconditional love of God that is so overpowering that a huge percentage of people who experience it change their lives fairly dramatically as a result. So what is that unconditional love? It's God. And so now we want to move let's move our definition here. Let's just change the name. Okay, so God is the source of that experience, of that unconditionally loving experience. And that is who God is. God is the ever-living, moving love of the universe. And so when we separate ourselves from God, we feel dead. Do you see how easily that happens?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and hey, look, I'm not just smiling and nodding at you here. I had a near-death experience in 2009, October 9, 2009. I remember the date. I will never forget it. And I did encounter something out there that absolutely, it was everything you described. It was an unconditional love and it's great comfort, and it knew me. And there was a communication happening there, but it wasn't necessarily with words, really. It was sort of a spirit-to-spirit kind of communication. And, you know, I come back from that, Marilynn, and I have never been the same. Never been the same since that. It was such a life-changing experience. And if I close my eyes, I can take myself back to that time, which to me felt like forever, felt like 1,000 years, you know, but it was just a few minutes. But it changed my whole point of view, and I come back thinking, you know what, the most important thing is how we treat each other. And I'm going to treat animals and people a whole lot better than I ever have before. And then the other thing, and maybe you can explain about this, because look, I experienced it. I don't understand everything about it. But in my experience, when I came back, I said, you know, I have to do something that is going to do some good in this world. And I just wasn't going to stop. And then, you know, I've always wanted to be on the radio, but how silly is that, right? Especially in this day and age, or even in 2009, 2010, you know, when this happened, it's kind of silly even back then too. But I just thought, you know, I'm going to take steps. And a couple little steps, I'm all the way here. So it really makes me wonder, you know, was this the thing? Because the entity being, I hesitate saying God, that I was in contact with kept saying, you know, you're going back because it needs to happen. And I'm going, what? What needs to happen? You'll find out. You'll find out. It just needs to happen, and that's why you gotta go back. So I don't know, is this the thing? Because this is the biggest thing that has happened, so I don't know. And this does do some good out there, because people write to me, Marilynn, and they tell me that. So, you know, I'm just offering this up as an example of somebody who's been down a path. I don't understand everything about it, but I've had this extraordinary experience that led me to this spot right here, right now, having this conversation with you. And is that what it is, to find out why you're here? You know, is that what it is? Am I missing something?
No, I think you're right on the money, and you had a quintessential near-death experience where you were sent back with a mission. And, you know, many people talk about coming back and changing everything that they did and the way they viewed everything and valuing the people that they loved so much more. And then also, you know, wanting to do and having this undeniable drive to do something that would be of positive impact on the world. And so absolutely, yes. And you know what we miss when we don't realize that that's God, that is that we don't recognize something even greater than that, which is energy itself, which is love, not the love, not just the simple limited love. It includes the love that we have here, but this love that people have experienced and have talked about, and you've experienced, I've experienced, is an energy. Mm-hmm. And this energy is what moves the good in the world. This is the energy that creates. This is the energy that brings things together. This is the energy that unites. This is the energy that many will also talk about, and I've experienced and many have, that oneness of all life and all existence, that is also part of that unconditional love. And all of this energy that is God is what moves the earth towards greater things and moves each one of us towards greater things. And so when we separate ourselves from God because of whatever our misunderstandings are, then what happens is we have literally cut ourselves off from the source of life itself. And that's why so many people these days are feeling very, very disconnected. And it's literally because many people are. And it's just become much, much more. And you'll see, we have so much more discord. We have so much more destructive things occurring, right? And that destructive energy is its opposite. That's the backwards motion that is taking us away from God. And so the more that we engage into that motion that goes backwards, the further we move from that source, which is the love that literally keeps us alive, enlivened, able to move forward. And that's what literally makes people feel the contentment, the peace, the love, and the unity, not just with themselves, but with all life. And that means we all operate very differently when we're moving within the forward motion of the love of God and all that comes with that, which is, even more than we've talked about, versus when we move with the backwards motion, which is pushing away from God. And so you have these two forces. You have destruction and creation creation is the light. That's God. In the dark side, you have destruction, which is the dark energy, and that is taking us into these lower realities. And, in the experiences that I've had, I've been taken into heavens, purgatories, and hells, many, many of them. And so we do have, we have upper realms, we have middle realms, which are purgatorial, and we have lower realms. We're not the highest thing in the universe by any means, but we are also not the lowest. There are realms below us, realms of evolution that exist below us. And so we can be pulled further into these backwards motions, which actually is a way to almost cause us a de-evolution in the soul, in the spirit, because we're moving away and the opposite direction of what we should be moving, which is forward towards the next level of attainment. But when we disconnect from that love of God, which is that energy, and so if someone has a problem with God, the name of God, think of universal being. Think of the energy that moves things forward. Think about that unconditional love, and that's what you have to start thinking about in conjunction with the idea of God, and start considering that perception is actually a hindrance as well.
Oh, right. No, right. God. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that, but I mean, there is just there is so much to this. And I feel as I look around out there and I see what's going on in the world, and I see people, Marilynn, that are just ready to lose it because they got 5 chicken nuggets instead of 6. I see people losing it on the road with road rage, and I see people also just frustrated because they're trying to make ends meet and everything. And we all just feel kind of squeezed by the environment around us. But we also do feel like something is off, something is missing, something quite isn't right. Everybody's vibing on that nowadays. And it could very well be this. And again, if anybody, everybody, look, my listeners know I'm not necessarily heavily religious, but to have a relationship with God, to acknowledge God, you don't really have to be. Like you said, if you can acknowledge that the creative as opposed to the destructive, the light as opposed to the darkness, because one thing I learned, and maybe you can correct me on this, but one thing I learned from my near-death experience is that the spark of life is God itself. And we all have one little spark from what I can't say that I comprehend everything that God is. Okay, I'll be honest with you on that. But every single one of us has a spark from the source within us. That was made clear to me in my near-death experience. And you come back to this world of mundaneness of bills and jobs and cleaning the house and everything. And you look at the world through completely different eyes, and you recognize just by being alive that you have got some value. And this is not an ego thing at all, but that we do have inherent value because you're walking around with the spark of God within you. And again, that language, maybe it's the church that has added the baggage to that. But maybe, people say the universe a lot nowadays. Maybe we, you in your mind call it the creative force. Well, we all have a spark of that creative force within us. That is what consciousness is, right?
Yes, very much so. Beautifully said. And the thing that we lose is we lose this flow. It's like I can see it in my mind. It's hard to describe, but there's this energy. It's almost like a circle of energy that moves constantly between the earth and heaven and back, and earth and heaven and back. And it's like when we allow ourselves to step into that movement and step a little bit into that movement, then we are entering into this synergy that comes with that connection to the divine. When we step away from it, we feel dead. We feel lifeless. We feel lost. We feel confused. We get depressed. All these things. And many of the things that we are seeing, because there is a spiritual counterpart to a lot of the things that are happening in the world today, in that there is, an evil energy that is flowing through our planet right now. And part of this that we have to recognize and understand is that we are really like inundated right now. We talked about the movie The Road to Armageddon, and I spoke about some experiences in that film about what was happening at the time of experiencing these experiences above cities in the United States where the concentration of the demonic in the air was so thick that I had to really fight my way through it. But this is all because of the thoughts of humanity. It's the actions of humanity. It's the disconnection from the source that leads to all this disarray. But this flood of evil that is coming through now is greater even than that. And it is something that I think a lot of people are feeling very overwhelmed by. And they will, because that is the natural course of such an energy. But what we have to recognize is that the only power that we have, each of us, is what we individually do with the spark of God that we contain. So what do we do with that energy point? Do we reconnect it to the source of the divine, which will lift up ourselves and this world? Or do we enter into that stream of backwards flow, backwards thinking, backwards movement? And so it will be a struggle for many, and there will be lots of struggles, with all the things that we're talking about. People are struggling with just getting by with their finances and all these things. But the struggle will also be spiritual in the sense that it will take more effort to pull ourselves out of that and into that higher flow, which takes us back towards the divine and back towards God, which is where our souls are naturally magnetized to. And so when we pull ourselves out of it, it's almost like, pulling a baby out of their mother's arms.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
And so we feel lost. We don't feel safe. We feel, just separated, and that's where all this confusion and all these things come from in part, in terms of the spiritual aspect of it, which is we have to recognize that the things that we are putting out there individually, but also as a bigger construct, which means, all of society, all of humanity, does have an energetic consequence. And at this exact moment, that consequence is that there is a dark wave moving through the world. But if we're going to change that, each one of us has to make that decision of which flow are we going to grab a hold of? Are we going to go towards the backwards flow and just, kind of roll with it? Or are we going to try to seek to get back into that circular energy between heaven and earth, which is the movement of the divine, which will propel our souls to a higher place of understanding. Without that type of movement, it almost becomes impossible for the soul to open up their eyes a little bit and recognize the things that they need to see to begin and continue in a true purification journey, because this purification journey is something that we each do individually, but we see that this goes on in our entire world at all times as well. Part of the reason for that, we live in a mortal world. We have the heavenly worlds, we have the lower realms, and we have mortal realms. Mortal realms, which is where we live, are realms where the battles between good and evil rage. And we see that happening all around us all the time, but we often forget that it is also going on inside of us. And that's where most of us have the most power, as to what we can do about what's going on inside of us. And if we enter into the purification process of what lies within us, we literally uplift the entire universal being, the oneness of all life, because every life that does this is uplifting the whole. And we make the potential for others to move higher easier and more possible by simply following that pattern. One of the things that Jesus Christ did when he came in, and many of the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, etc., was they brought in a new pattern that became possible for us by them bringing it in. Something that was not here before. They not only brought it in the content of their teaching, but they brought in an actual pattern, an energetic thrust, that by their very incarnation, they brought in a new potential. And so those are the kinds of things we want to grab a hold of. In the purification journey, one of the things you'll see in my writings is that I was led to, get all the ancient sacred texts from all the different world religions and tribal traditions and cultures and things like that. And I was led on this journey where I was specifically instructed which texts I was supposed to be reading and when. And I was reading all these different things, and it was really fascinating. But through these processes, what I learned about the ancient sacred texts is that these are the writings of those great souls. And these are usually the writings, the last writings that they left behind before they ascended this world. Mm. And what that tells us is that those words are gold, because that is the instructions that we need to understand. Well, what is it that we don't understand that they did, that they realized, and we need to know so that we can take the next step from being a person here that's kind of reincarnating and kind of doing the same thing over and over again to, I want to figure out what is the lesson of this mortal realm? What are we supposed to attain to? One of the things that we spoke about in the documentary we did on the Stairway from Earth to Heaven was the fact that I had these visions, these experiences where I was shown the ancient sacred texts from all of these amazing prophets, saints, mystics, sages, ascetics, from throughout time, all world traditions, all religions, all everything. And these were piled like a set of stairs. So these texts were created like a set of stairs from Earth to these beautiful celestial spheres. And it was profoundly beautiful. Wow. But what I realized was, every single one of them was taking me one step. And then the next one would take me the next. But it was this pathway which was opening these keys inside of my soul that was showing me, well, how do I get there? But it's not just one thing. It's all these many things, because each of these amazing souls, were given like a different experience of God. And I often compare it to a diamond that has many facets. And so each of these views of God is infinitely beautiful and infinitely important, but they're all different. But you can't have the whole diamond without every single facet. Mm. And so, the writings of the great Buddhists from the past, the great Buddhist mystics, the Hindu mystics, the Christian mystics, the Sikh mystics, the Kabbalists, and all of them. I'm kind of looking around my house because I have the ancient sacred text library here, and I'm just trying to remember them all. But when you realize this, and you realize, wow, this gold is available to us, and it's in plain view, but we don't see it. Right. Most of us don't see it, but it's in plain view. Yes. It's right there waiting for us to grab a hold of it. Yes. And, there's an excitement in this, and I'm just really feeling the spirit right now. There's a tremendous excitement in this, because you recognize that you don't have to settle for this muck, the garbage, this backwards flow, which is almost like, a stopped up sewage pipe. You know what I mean? You don't have to settle for that backwards flow, that nasty little sewage pipe that burst, and you can choose the living waters of the unconditional love of God, which powers the universe. That is what has the power to create and enliven and bring things back to life. And we can choose it, even if everyone around us is not in that. We can still do it. And when we do, we lift up the potential for the entire realm.
My goodness. I mean, that is so profound, Marilynn. And you're right. These teachings are out there available to us. It doesn't cost anything. It really comes down to an internal decision that one makes. And the reason I'm saying all this is because, you know, I've had a few experiences with the good and the bad in my life. And why don't we take a break? And I'd love to come back and you know, will you teach us, show us the way. What I also like to find out too, about your own out-of-body experiences. And, you know, it sounds like you were talking about how some of this went to you. But again, there's a lot of people hurting out there. And, you know, if we come back from the break, can you teach us, you know, how do we do this? Because I think somebody might hear this stuff and might think, wow, that sounds kind of complicated. Maybe I'm not good enough to do that. But I strongly believe every single human being is not only good enough to do that, absolutely capable of making the choice toward the creative, toward the light. And you don't necessarily have to walk around wearing a cross in order to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. You can if you want. But how does that sound to you? We go to a break and we come back. Can you teach us the way, my friend?
Let's do it.
All right. That sounds really good to me. This is so, I can feel the upliftment, and I love that word. I haven't used that word, but I love it. The upliftment. I can feel it just talking about this. Incredible. Okay, Marilynn, you don't go anywhere. Stay right there. We're going to head out here, just right quick, everybody, to this break. And look, I mean, it's a simple decision, right? Between the creative and the destructive, between the light and the darkness, which one do we want to be? Right? I mean, that is what it comes down to. And a lot of times you hear when you talk about manifestation these days, and somebody wants to manifest this thing or that thing or a job or a car or healing or anything, we talk about the verse. I think what we're really talking about is God. And if that I'm sure that maybe makes some people uncomfortable. I'm not telling you to go to church right now. I'm telling you to choose the creative, because she's right. She's right. And do you see what I'm talking about now with Marilynn Hughes? She's amazing. And truly, I think we all want to create something in this world and be uplifted, right? Right? I mean, come on now. I want to be uplifted. Don't you want to be uplifted? Anyways, this has to do with out-of-body.
That was a clip of me from today's big win. See, when we were kids, my brother and I used to get whipped at wiffle ball by our cousins, and then they'd tell us we played ball like grandma.
Woo! Who plays like grandma now, guys, huh?
Today, we're all adults, but revenge has no timetable. So just this morning, my brother and I lured our cousins to a field and broke out a wiffle ball, a plastic bat, and the decisive blow. My upsy-downsy pick.
Who plays like you guys, huh? Who plays like grandma now? You do, that's who. You're a grandma player. That's what you should be doing. Shuffleboard, wiffle style.
That was my triumphant moment. Maybe I should have a trophy made up.
There are days, and there are glory days. Celebrate yours at Glory Days Grill.
Lake of Bays, tower to base. Come in, base.
Go ahead for base.
Base, we are at a code red. This is not a drill.
Tower, did I just hear code red?
10-4, deep red. You're gonna want to see this.
How deep?
Very deep red. Lots of body, roasty, nutty, quite complex.
Sounds like a spark house. Tower, do you need backup?
10-4, go to the LCBO or beer store and bring more.
Spark house red ale.
This is not a drill.
You've got corn chips all over your car. Every time you climb in, you think, I gotta clean up those corn chips. You find yourself thinking about the corn chips during the day. It bothers you. Let me tell you something. You're never going to clean up those corn chips. Take the car to Jiffy Lube. They'll vacuum them right up, and they'll change the oil, which is one of the most important things you can do to make your engine last longer. It's easy. You don't need an appointment, and there always seems to be a Jiffy Lube nearby. You'll tell everyone, I'm taking my car to Jiffy Lube to get the oil changed. They'll think it's because you're a responsible car owner. But we'll both know it's really about the corn chips. Jiffy Lube, the well-oiled machine.
If you're driving and you hear that Toff's Valraven Salty Caramel Fudge Truffle has salty chocolate thick fudge, salty caramel ice cream, and salty caramel truffles, you might bend forward and try to lick your car radio. And then you'll drive into a lake or the back of a dump truck. Hi, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just licked my car radio and drove into a dump truck.
I knew it.
And then a lake.
Toff's is different, and different is good. Visit toffdairy.com.
We have ignitions.